Please welcome to these drinks, Rafael Casal, special surprise guest, Janina Gavankar.
Hello.
Thank you guys so much for coming.
Thanks for having us. Thanks for watching the thing, guys. I hear you're not in session yet, so there's no extra credit for this.
So I know the director is a Chapman grad, but I just dawned on me the producers are USC grads. So Keith and Jess, and I
They
think
both came here?
They did.
Is this where they fell in love?
I think it was that.
A lot of things happen at USC, guys. Look around, meet each other. Now it got weird, sorry, go ahead.
Because this film is so much about friendship, let's go back to the beginning and start, sort of where the two of you guys really formed your friendship and how that migrated into working together professionally.
Well, I met Janina when we were
Raised into each other's eyes.
I met Rafa when he was a freshman and I was a senior at Berkeley High School. And yeah.
Berkeley.
What?
Berkeley.
Yes, Berkeley. It's a place. It's a real place. We pretend it doesn't exist in this movie, but it's right there. It's like right next to the thing. We met at Berkeley High School. I watched him do some poems. He was all right. And then I left for college and came back like 4 years later. And we had like friends who were sort of insistent that we work together. And he was running a studio in North Oakland. And I went there and we stayed up all night writing songs, and that was it. I was like, that's this. I'm just gonna keep doing this. So that's how it went for me.
How'd it go for you, Rafa?
Huh?
I want to hear your version of this story.
It's pretty much that, except that I was a really good poet. Very talented.
13, are we talking about 13 and 18 years old? 14, 17?
14 and 18, yeah.
Oh,
Diggs is much older.
Baby.
Older and more attractive.
But yeah, no, I mean, we no easy pivot. No, we started working together like right after high school for me, right after college for Diggs. And there's a lot of through lines for us between like music and poetry and theater, and eventually obviously script writing for film that just felt very intuitive for our the way that our sort of creativity works, especially in tandem with each other. We just felt like everything got better when the other one was involved. So I think just the first person that I would call if I was working on something was like, well, let me see what Diggs thinks of this, let me see if he wants to get involved, and vice versa. So essentially what happened with this film is the opportunity sort of got presented to me. The producers that Jess and Keith met David a few years later, and we sort of realized, oh, well, this is going to be even better if we do this together, if we're sort of the two leads, and it's about the Bay Area, and that sort of set us on the path of spending 10 years working on writing this movie.
Over the 10 years, tell us a few of the major steps that you guys had to go through in terms of figuring out. I mean, it sounds like from the beginning, Oakland was going to be central, and really like a real representation of Oakland. You were going to really tell a story about the places that you knew, the places you grew up in, but then you actually had to come up with a plot to go along with the characters. So tell us a bit about how you guys discovered what the story was going to be.
Well, pretty soon after we started writing, Oscar Grant was murdered, and we were living around Fruitvale BART Station. I was like 5 blocks away, and so that became, we everything always goes back to how we're going to accurately represent Oakland, right? So at that time, to accurately represent Oakland, that was it. That was all. That was what was around. It was what we were all thinking of, and it was a very different story at that time. So there were protests, and Oscar's face was everywhere, and riots, and breaking shit. And so the early drafts of that film were really about that, about these two characters, sort of, and their different responses to that event. But there were also like big expensive protest scenes and lots of window breaking and things like, you know, we didn't know how to write a movie. And we didn't know that anyone was ever gonna make it for real, so the budget didn't matter anyway. But we, you know, over time, working on something for that long, the dialogue around these kinds of shootings has changed. And so like that's one of the biggest changes over the course of over time to me, is that it used to be very much about the specifics of this person who was shot. The film used to be called Running Down, and that character's name who was shot was Randall Downs. And we, yeah, over time the conversation shifted because it became so commonplace and so often reported that we can't even remember the names all the time. You know, there are so many victims reported that we can't keep track or remember who was what, who got choked out or who got tased or who got whatever, you know. And so the only way to have Colin be affected by it for real was to be the witness of it, and everyone else around it is only sort of passingly affected by the tragedy. And that was kind of a big, that's to me the biggest shift from where we started to where we ended.
9-10 years in the making, a lot's changed in Oakland over that time. How early did or at what point did the shifting identity of Oakland become a central theme of the movie?
I think to a certain degree it's always been there. I mean, the concept of them being movers has been there since the beginning. I think again, it's a thing that intensifies over time, right? Like the nature of gentrification is that it suddenly ramps. And so I think for us it's become more prominent because we don't live in the Bay anymore. We live here. We lived in New York before that, and we're back in LA before that. We sort of watch it almost as outsiders sometimes. Now go home and see something removed. So I think it's very drastic for us. We're like, oh, these 5 restaurants don't exist anymore. Oh, this park is different now. Oh, this hangout spot we used to go to is gone. And so I think in our process, because we had that sort of bird's eye view on the situation, the degree of it and the speed of it became so much more prominent to us. Like it felt violent. It felt like going home and they've taken a room out of the house you grew up in, and then you go back again and they've taken another room out of it and a stairwell and these memories, these factions of your identity are just disappearing every time you go back and check in. And so we were trying to parallel the physical violence that's happening on black bodies by police with the sort of more systemic, well, they're both systemic, but the more communal effect of this gentrification that is just as sort of violent, that's about displacement and about sort of living on top of existing communities until they no longer exist. It's a different kind of removal of people.
Well, Janina, tell us a little bit about how you jumped into all of this. What was the casting process like? How involved were you guys in terms of auditions or reading people or knowing people that you wanted involved?
They have a community of artists around them that they have. You've grown your community with a lot of love for many, many years, and I just wanted in. No, I mean to be honest, you guys know this. I have. It's not always easy to find a group of multidisciplinary artists that are checking for each other as hard as you guys do for your squad. Like that's a very real thing. The people that have made this movie it's like thick as thieves, everybody, and I didn't really know that part. I just knew that you guys are multidisciplinary artists, and I had a friend who is in this, Budkar, who steals the whole fucking movie from all of us. Like this girl.
Don't clap for him. He ain't here.
She doesn't.
Fuck that dude. He could have been here. Nah.
He could have been here.
No.
He's dropping his parents off at the airport. Leave him alone.
Fuck Budkar.
Her hand's literally just at this. We'll never tell him. But he's the only person that I knew in this group of people, and I called him and I read the script and was like, fuck, if I don't do this movie, I'm gonna die. Like it became so high stakes. And so I hit him and was like, just please tell your friends that I'm the most talented brown girl you've ever met. Because we definitely need a brown girl, and I know I got that part. So So yeah, so that was yeah. Anyway, and then I auditioned. Actually, first I met with Jess, Keith, and Carlos. Because I wanted to meet them first and sort of see if this is this really what I think it's going to be, and that was very clearly the case. And then I came in, met these two, and read with that boy, and then I got to make this film. But really, from the outside, it was just like not just this film, but what you guys represent as a community of artists is really exciting because this is the first of many things that will come from these two, and yeah. I'm just, here to support.
Well, and we're here to be in your project. I mean, that's the real hype, right? You like, you keep the dope people around you to keep yourself in work. Like, that shit is selfish. But but once this thing was actually getting made, we were keeping our hands in every single part of it. So we auditioned everybody, like every callback we were reading at pretty much, unless someone couldn't, make the trip or whatever, and we reviewed every tape. And we, we were super, super hands-on. Also because the sort of depicting of Oakland was so important to us, and we knew that nobody else was gonna get it right. The whole point was to make it the way we saw it, right? And no one else is gonna do that. Our perspective is super specific, so we, as people were coming in, we were super hands-on. But Janina came in and did sort of taught us who Val was, and that's great. Pretty much every actor who's in this movie did that to a certain degree, but Janina probably the most obvious. We were reading a lot of people who we loved who were in a very different direction. And Janina came in and did almost the opposite thing in the scene. We were like, oh, that's it. That's Val. We didn't even know. She had to tell us who this person we invented was. And that was really amazing. So we sort of, once that happened, it was pretty clear.
Your director, Carlos, is not from Oakland. So tell us a little bit about what you guys did to sort of get his bearings in terms of telling the story with such authenticity.
We've worked with Carlos for a long time. Is the first.
Please
thing.
go down a rabbit hole after this. Please. Not just of what they've made with him, but of Carlos's work. He has a huge body of work in music videos. They're all so fucking dope.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's it. He's dope. Carlos is shit. And we worked on a lot of music videos together. I met him doing videos for my band Clipping, and the first thing we ever worked on, I never met him. We were just talking on the phone about this video concept that we had a $1,000 budget for. And we had never met before. We had a lot of conversations about my head being smashed open and like he wanted cats coming out of my torso, and I was like, no cats on the internet, please. We're gonna do rats instead. That's way more gangster. And we were we had all these conversations. I was like, this motherfucker can't make this video for $1,000. I don't know what, but whatever. I'll show up on the day. And we showed up on the day in Beverly Hills, and he had a motherfucking Mophie. He had the street lights he had somehow gotten access to all of the lights on the buildings, and they were flashing in time with the music. He had we were doing this one take thing, so we spent 14 hours rehearsing and then shot it 3 times. It was the most overreaching thing I had ever seen done until the next time we worked together. Everything we've done since then has been way beyond the means of the thing. And so eventually when we all moved to New York, Rafa and I designed this program called the Bars Workshop.
I think that people can sign up now to get into that program. Is that?
You could, if you're gonna be in New York in July.
Tell your friends.
At a date that I'm supposed to know, but I can't hold dates in my head.
Go to Rafael's Instagram, the information's there.
Bars Workshop NYC.
Told you I'm the hype man. That's literally the only reason I'm here.
Anyway, this thing, Bars.
That's the worst plug I've ever heard. It's the Bars Workshop at the Public Theater in New York. It's a verse in theater workshop that is July and August for developing artists. If you do a summer in New York, you should be a part of it because it's awesome. Founder. But no, Carlos, they culminates in this sort of big medley video project, this sort of this documentation of a theater performance at the end, and Carlos had done these videos for Diggs, and so we sort of brought him in to shoot this. It's this like all in one take 30-minute theater production with a live audience that requires a lot of ridiculous tricks.
But we didn't ask him to do that. We just asked him to be the dude to hold the camera to document the thing. That was the
motherfucker
ask.
Don't listen though, and so
the ask was like, can you just like tape it so that we have a record of it? And he showed up with a crew and track and fucking.
Yeah, there was a whole like this 30-person crew in this theater, and then Carlos became that dude to us. Like every time we have a good idea, he finds a way to make it bigger and better. And so I think when we came around to doing this film, and they gave us a say in who the director was. One, it was like you want somebody who's gonna like if anybody here is from the Bay, like you know the Bay is always dialed to 11, so you need a director who's gonna dial the film to 11, and then also a director who's going to listen to us because the specificity of the Bay Area was essential to getting it right. Like if anyone does a film about your hometown, you're like meticulously picking apart if it's not accurate. And so we needed someone who was willing to sort of interface with us in that way, and we just had developed such a great shorthand with him over time. We were like, well, we're first-time filmmakers. Let's like round this shit out and give another like a music video director essentially a shot at his first feature. And I think that created this environment of like really banding together.
It's like all this talent of how to turn this knob to 11 in the body of like a bad-postured 80-year-old professor who's
this is
also
being filmed.
Still, he should stand up straight. He should hear this. He doesn't have scoliosis.
That's the most Janina thing you've ever said.
But really, like.
But also,
yes.
and then we spent a lot of time in the Bay with him. I mean, not a lot, but in pre-production he was there and had like a lot. This is the sort of real gratifying thing about this. We used as many folks from the Bay as possible. For the folks who didn't, a lot of things in the film they thought were hyperbole until they got there and were like, "You toned shit way down." Like we didn't think it was believable. But so he spent a fair amount of time there. Was really careful and asked a ton of questions. You can't. I mean, that's an amazing thing, really, for a director, and it's because we had this existing relationship. There were sort of opportunities to work with directors who were maybe more prestigious or had done other films, but like we didn't. The X factor there is, can you work with them? Which, if you have 22 days to shoot a movie, like you better be able to work. So we knew we could work with Carlos, and it worked out. I mean, so many things in there are, again, just made better because of his input. We had a script that we thought was like really dope, and then I think the film is doper than the script was.
Let's talk about your philosophy for how to incorporate the rap into the film, because all of the moments in the film where you wind up having a character rapping is either sort of an emotional climax, sort of intensity, or in some cases also used for humor. So talk a little bit about how much you wanted the characters to rap in the film, how much it was going to be literal versus how much it was going to be sort of maybe an expression of what they're thinking. How did that evolve?
Damn it.
You said such a great thing.
Yeah, so there have been many iterations of the script in which there are moments where it was really, really dense in verse and moments when it was a little bit less. But I think it really worked in the reverse. We know how to rap. We didn't know how to write a movie. So the easy part was finding out where to have these like verse-driven moments, because that's our sweet spot, that's our comfort zone. It was really how do we fit a movie around that in a way that felt cohesive, that felt like a clear narrative. And so a lot of the rap sections or like heightened language and poetic verse sections have been in the script the longest. And we've really been sort of reverse engineering from there. I think the only places that we had to be very delicate is about how to sort of transition from something that's a little bit more literal to something a little bit more metaphorical. and there's a lot of conventions that are being used there. One, it's being used in the same way that you would in a musical, where when people need to express themselves in a heightened way or need to express a lot of information in a condensed way, you go into verse or your language heightens, the same way you would like suddenly pivot into a song. But I think we were really fortunate to, because we're musicians, because a lot of the people around us that are part of the creative process are also musicians, that the sound design played this really important element. I think it was like maybe halfway through those like 10 years of working on it that we started conceptualizing it in this, well, maybe there's an environmental sort of percussiveness that comes in that helps us transition. And so a lot of the sounds that you hear under the moments that are heightened are ambient sounds put to sort of a arrhythmic or rhythmic meter to give you a sense of rhythm without it being like a beat or being a song. So even in that last scene you saw with Diggs and Officer Molina, there's the BART train is going by, the alarm in the house is sort of in time. There's the washing machine starts being in time, and all of those were sort of designed in advance, or like as a skeleton in advance, so that it really just came from the environment instead of like a hard pivot. And then the writing is such to also sort of ease you into those moments. But there's more verse moments than like the 2 or 3 that are obvious. The beauty salon is all in verse. When they're selling the sailboat and it's into the car with all the slang, all that stuff is in cadence. Like it's not in a meter, but it's in a cadence. There's all these moments that we're sort of massaging or introducing this idea of verse. So when you have sort of the most literal, sort of magical moment of it at the end, it doesn't feel as jarring of a leap.
I've always believed that, like, we approach everything from this rapper perspective, right? For me, like, rap shows have always worked best when you start them with a pretty dense acapella, right? With something with nothing else around it that is about as complicated as you're going to be for the rest of the show, because it trains the audience's ear to listen to something that is sort of outside of the norm. You sort of force people into it, which is why we have them rapping really close to the top of the film with almost nothing else going on. And it's why, like, throughout we're sort of massaging in these moments of verse so that at the end you're already trained, whether you know it or not, like you've been trained to listen to this throughout the whole film, and you can catch the things that are going by more quickly.
This film is so incredible at blending so many different sort of emotions and experiences. It's funny, but it can get very quickly very dramatic, scary, suspenseful. I mean, things that are really just incredibly impressive in the texture, the overall layer of all these different tones. When you guys were writing the script, tell us about how you were going to sort of work with these different kinds of ways of telling the story.
Well, I think a couple things. The first is just that that's life, right? I mean, like, I've never felt one thing at a time, to my knowledge. You know, like I've never had that experience, and I don't know. And so, like, people talk about this a lot, but then I always think about, like, you do turn on a dime all the time. I am happy and then sad. And I am, like, we are very comfortable with feeling that way. It's just like a tricky thing to massage in a film because we're used to watching things sort of focus.
It's like subversive to what we expect out of a movie.
Right. So that's part of it, but also it again, like every choice in this went back to being true to the town, and Oakland's a place where all of that does exist at the same time, right? It is an incredibly sort of well-read place. People are, like, language is huge there. And it is also economically depressed, and there is a lot of joy mixed in with a world that is not always the easiest. I always say I grew up poor but not sad. I don't remember ever being sad as a kid. We didn't have any money. So, like, those things not being at odds, those jumping back and forth from these extremes, like, was just trying to represent the town accurately. It's I always say, like, the Bay Area treats virtuosity as if it's mundane, right? Like that's when you listen to the music that's from there. I went to high school. We went to Berkeley High School with like some of the greatest jazz musicians of our time, right? Ambrose Akinmusire, who was teaching here for a while. He may still be, right? Went to high school with that dude, and like he would, you know, him and his group of friends or whatever, they would play these incredible solos, and motherfuckers would look at him like, yeah, that's what you do, and go on about your you know, like, and that's how everything it was. The virtue, if that is the thing you do, you're supposed to be great at it. Move on, you know. So, and everyone was excited about it. Everyone was very like, you know, you got props for that, but they weren't like, it wasn't out of the ordinary. Everyone's great at something, you know. We're also sort of products of a generation where we were told we could do whatever we want. Like we were told we were great, right? All of our parents, I don't know, your parents, all of us, that we were always told we were great. And so that's, you know, so you're supposed to be great. We're not surprised. We are happy that you are great, you know? That's kind of what it was.
It's a very Bay Area hippie parent thing.
Yeah.
You're wonderful.
It is, oh yeah, man.
You mentioned earlier that Janina brought in a totally unique approach to her character that you hadn't seen before. So Janina, what did you do in terms of, you know, how you wanted to perform this character that surprised them?
What did you do, Janina?
You know what you did. I mean, I didn't see the rest of the audition, so I don't really know what was totally different. But I do know that my general interpretation of who this person was two things. One, yeah, everything's changing, but I can either be a victim or I can try to thrive within a system that I cannot control. So that was sort of like the basis for her. And really also, and I've been in this situation where I'm like, I love you so much, but I will not let you slow me down. I can't let that happen. I have people who love me, my parents expect me to make something of this lifetime, man. What they went through to make this life for me, I will not fuck this up. I love you, but, right? And that's what it was. And the but, it's a big but. And maybe that was it. So I brought a lot of ass today, is what I'm trying to say. And I just felt like the piece needed that. So I don't really know if that's what it was, but that's what I identified as something I haven't seen often, and also really why I really wanted to be her.
Yeah, I mean, it was such an important choice to make, I think. You know, when you have a film that, because of the way that we're telling the story, focuses so much on the two of us, but we really, we're trying very hard to write all of the characters with lives that this just happens to not be their movie, but that they, you know, you expect that they have there is another movie about them, that they're complex enough and interesting enough to hold that, but you know, we didn't always succeed at that, but I think our actors did. They made up for our faults. Janina particularly, I think, sort of brought so much outside life into this character that, you know, you really get the sense of that. And I don't know that you did from the writing. Certainly not everybody auditioning did, you know,
There's this one, I can't remember this or not, but there's this moment when we basically almost make out, and then your mom calls for us, right? And I feel like can you tell me if you wrote this or not, but I say, this is why I didn't want to come over here. Was that in the improv? Did you write that? Was that in the, I can't remember. But
if you liked it, yes.
I don't remember if it was an improv, like it was a moment that you guys kept, or but that was it. That was the moment. I was like, don't do it. And that was like her completely, that was their relationship, because it could have gone down on that couch real fast before Mom came in.
I was hoping for it.
Different movie.
I also wanted to bring up Ethan Embry's performance, especially in that last scene, is incredible, and you know, there's almost no lines, and I'm curious to know if that is the version of that character you guys wrote, or if that came out through his performance.
I wish I wrote it that good. I wish we sat down and wrote this character that three-dimensional.
There's nothing to write.
There's nothing to write. There's no lines. You know, we read some different people for that role, and everyone gave us the same sort of two-dimensional cop read. Because there wasn't a lot to work with on the page. I mean, somebody was going to have to do the investigation of what it means to play a character that complex in the just in the eyes and in the breath and like that. We certainly didn't contain that character in any way to try to make them the definitive villain, or like in the same way that we talked about some of the female characters, that we tried to make it appear as though he had been having a crazy week too, but it's just not his fucking movie. Right, and the reason we did that is we were like, well, those police officers get to have their story all in the news all week. Like they're getting defended by people, and they're getting, like everything is sort of about protecting them. But the story of who doesn't get told is the person who dies, and the people who are affected. Those are the people who don't get any representation in the media. So we're like, cool, we're not going to spend time telling his side of the story. We get that all the time. But in these moments where we see him, which is really just in a dream at the top and at the end, and with these flashes of this sort of still image, like his headshot is in the news a few times, how do we create a contrast between the headshot and the person? And what Ethan did is he, latched onto this role and dug deep and did reading and called friends and like created this whole crazy backstory of what had been going on all week and where this man had grown up and what his mentality was, how long he'd been on the force. And what you get is all of that in the eyes and all of that in the tension in the body and the moments when he relaxes and how he delivers those few lines.
Would call us all the time to like talk about, to be like, I just read this thing and I really think, and to really sort of bounce his ideas for who this character was off of us, which was just unbelievable to have, it was unbelievable that he would agree to do the film in the first place, right? But like for him to put as much sweat into it as he did, and it shows in the literally everybody who sees the film comments on his performance. I don't know many 6-word performances that get that consistently from audiences. He's staggering in it, and you can see all of the work that he put in, and we're just unbelievably grateful to him because it needed to be a complicated character. He needed to be alive and real, and he there's so much more there than we had imagined.
All right, I want to open this up. Get some questions from you guys. Let's start with it.
How similar are the characters to your personalities in real life? And if they aren't or are similar, who are they based on, if anyone?
So she's asking if the characters are in any way similar to you guys in real life, and if not, are they based on anyone?
They're compilations of people. They're both sort of a bunch of people smashed together. We say that their energies are similar in how they relate to each other is similar most of the time to how Rafael and I relate to each other. I usually say less and am slightly more still.
Bad bounce.
But I think but they're definitely not us. Most things in this film were drawn from experiences, circumstances, people, friends. So there's a lot of like personal stories in here, amplified or tweaked to fit in the overall story of the film. But when we decided Miles and Colin were the best characters to describe a changing Oakland landscape, we sort of just went through our mental Rolodexes of people being like, this part of this friend is really useful for Colin, and oh, you remember this dude from high school, that's in Miles,
How much are you like Val?
I have a way better sense of humor than Val. Come on, guys.
That's true. Sorry to be critiquing that in real time. I had to think about it, but it is true.
No, I have I just identified with her a lot, yeah, and I threw a lot of like the focus and like the pressure on oneself to not fuck up into her, so I identify with that, but like
We're actors.
we're exactly the same as what I'm saying. We're the same person. No.
Only cast people who are exactly like
Yeah.
the people
Yeah.
you're
Acting is
Right.
another thing.
Aside from people that it might be drawn from, there are so many very funny moments in this movie. And I mean, the arms dealer who's driving Uber, the Portland guy that shows up and immediately gets the California
The arms.
The arms dealer. That's just the dude. The Uber part of that is
Lord
made
of
up.
War.
Tell us, are any of the sort of the social satire things in here based on real experiences?
Yeah, that one's real.
Yeah.
That
one's
scene is
particular?
real. Yeah, that happened to me when I was 23. But I'm Colin
He's
in the
Colin,
real
yeah.
version. But yeah, I off the cuff mentioned to a friend that I was 23. Like all my friends had guns. I was like, I want a gun. I'll think about getting a gun sometimes. It's like, oh cool. Do you want this kind or like how about? And he's just sort of like opened up the glove box. He opened up the airbag thing in his driver's wheel. Pulled out one there. He had like one with an extended clip here, and then he reached behind him and pulled out another one. And I was just sitting there with all these guns in my lap, like, motherfucker, you gotta tell me when you have an arsenal in the vehicle.
Wouldn't have gotten the car.
Yeah, would have gotten a lift.
Did not exist.
Not exist at the time.
Free lift.
Yeah, but a lot of those moments are very real from both of our lives. That is how you make something feel authentic to home. Is go, cool, let's change this. The whole thing with the scorpion bowl happened to a friend of ours who Colin is based on. Luckily, he didn't actually light someone on fire. But he was like, yo, somebody almost got lit on fire, and I was like, yeah, but what if it had happened though? Would you have gone to jail?
The stakes of the circumstances that these two characters are in together are obviously higher and higher still, and I'm wondering if, in the writing process, you guys ever considered sort of closing out the story of their relationship in a different way than you did.
So she's asking if they had ever considered closing out the story of their relationship in a different way.
Yeah, man, I think if we heard it, everybody heard it. She far away as fuck. Good, I'm just complimenting your projecting. There was a version, so there's a thread in the film of Colin not cleaning the bathroom, which is based on a true story of one of my close friends back home. And we pulled that because in real life, he forgot the last day and they sent him back to jail for 7 months after doing 6 years in prison and a year in a halfway house. So there was a point where we were gonna have the whole movie be all these misses that you're just like, oh, I'm so glad I didn't get caught up, and you forget about the bathroom, just like my friend did, and like Colin would have, and we were gonna send him back to jail. And then we realized that would crush all of your souls. And it was too mean.
But it did, the important part of that was about trying to get across what a trap the prison system is, even when you're out, and how it really, like, being on probation means, like, they're actively trying to send you back to jail. We have so many stories like that from friends of just like, you are being hunted, and it's because they make money off of you. That's the reality of the situation. So getting out is, you have a length of time. It's like a game. It's like a crazy. It's like, what was that fucking? And then they were none, right? So it's an Agatha Christie story, but it's like you have this length of time during which you have to survive without them snatching you back. And if you make it to the end, you win the fortune of freedom. Except you can't get a job, so or both.
Unless someone's
That's right.
really kind to you and keeps a job for you, so you can come see her every morning, and
Yes.
also with your asshole friends, so the two of you can have a job.
Yes, Val, you're very misunderstood.
Bay Area representation of music obviously plays a key part in this film. I'm sure you guys must have died maybe working before you. What can you tell us about the EP and what's it?
Okay, that one you should project.
So she's saying that she's impressed by the representation of Oakland music in the soundtrack, and if there's an EP, if so, when's it coming in?
Do you know? I don't know dates.
It was great to work with E40. That was
Yeah.
bucket list.
That came in on the, like, we had asked E40 if he would write a verse for this song, and he said yes. was amazing. And then we were literally printing the film to send off to
And he hasn't
Sundance,
sent
and
it.
then the verse came in, like while we were printing it. We had
Yeah.
to open the motherfucker back up and spend hella money, but it was for sure worth it. Like, it was like, there was actually not an option. The producer was like, "Are you sure we have to?" We're like, yes, for the end, that credit song has to be in the thing.
We're working on the music. We're doing a music project that is music inspired by the Bay Area in the film. No one can understand that, but she's saying it's really good. It's just scary.
I know,
It's horrifying.
Just looking for the ghost.
Cut her off. Cut off her mic. We're working on it. I don't think we're allowed to say when it's coming out, but the movie comes out July 20th, and it'll be before that shit. So,
it may or may not be in 3 installments.
yes, may or may not be.
That's news. Did you guys say that yet?
What?
Is this the first time you said that?
No, I don't know. I mean, I do live streams all the time and just start playing the music, so you'll probably catch most of it there. Sorry, Republic.
Great. Hi.
So,
First of all, I thought it was interesting that you chose to put Sean in a Marshawn Lynch jersey, even though it is best with the Seahawks.
debatable.
That's not debatable.
That's actually
He did
not
do his
debatable.
best
You're
for
100%
the
right.
Seahawks.
I just don't like how you came for our lives already.
But he opened up his store in the town, and he's for sure from the town, and he for sure don't live in Seattle, so.
Feel the burn.
But anyway, my question is you tackled a lot of themes like interracial couples, masculinity, a little bit of femininity, police brutality. You must have been intimidated to tackle all these and only have like an hour and 20 minutes to do so. So can you talk about how you decided to flush out certain themes and stay more reserved on others?
We didn't
I don't
try
think we
to-
tackled shit. I think we just showed it. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like, but that's you know what I'm saying. Like, I think that's the trick. Is like, if you set out to summarize and address and profess something about a subject matter, you will inevitably fail. There isn't a film long enough to cover police brutality in its entirety. You know what I'm saying?
And you'd also have to assume a perspective on it that, you know what I'm saying, all we were trying to do was tell these guys' story, and that's the rest of the stuff that came up is that's cool. We hope that it sparks conversation about those things, but we were sort of discovering that those things were in it as well, and everything changes over time. There's a huge gun debate going on right now, so Sean holding that gun is a much bigger deal. I mean, it's always a terrifying thing, right? It's always been that. But it's now part of a national debate that wasn't going on when we started writing this film. So, you know, we weren't trying to touch on gun violence as like a topic. It just
Like there
guns
wasn't
exist.
there wasn't a column somewhere where we were like, oh, this is everything we're going to say about guns, and this is everything we're going to say about it. Just sort of, we just didn't pretend as though the world was any different than the world that we know. You know what I'm saying? And like, if we are to create art that sparks any sort of conversation, then I can't pretend that this scene with all of the guns in the car didn't happen. You know what I mean? Like, that is what happened. Miles's reaction is his reaction. Colin's reaction is his reaction. We can either judge them for it in like a larger sort of political conversation, or acknowledge the reality that there are a fuck ton of guns in inner city neighborhoods, and that's just a part of life. And let's have that conversation, not whether or not we like how they deal with guns, but why the fuck there are 6 guns available to them in the first place. You know what I mean? So I think for us it was more, let's represent this accurately. Let's make, like, there's a moment where we, you know, the little kind of intentional things that we would do is like, Colin's mother is dating a Chinese guy who has a kid. We assume maybe from another marriage or another person, obviously, and we just know couples like that. So we have friends who have that makeup of their parents. We were like, well, that's something that's unique about the Bay Area that we don't see everywhere. We don't see in a film. Let's just make sure that we throw that in there. You know, I don't know that we gave a ton of thought about like what that would politically say, so much as that it exists, and because it exists, we can be sort of unapologetic about it.
I just wanted to thank you guys so much for showing
Yes.
Yeah. It's about
Hell yeah. I know there. I mean,
Are we allowed to say the date?
I don't. Well, because I don't know. Like, I'm there. Look, there's gonna be events and shows and then I'm just gonna be showing up to theaters on the day it comes out. I'm not gonna say shit. Just be on the side.
Well, Lionsgate's been wonderful, and we're having a premiere event in the. There's no reason to announce that except that you could just come hang out if you were around there. But
We'll do the thing at that Grand Lake, like what the things, all the things. Yes,
I know what you mean.
you already know.
yeah.
Guys, that was so rad.
I mean, I'll take all the props. We can do that shit too. Yeah. Anybody else want to shout out praise?
You said it took 10 years to put the movie together. What was that whole, like, what was that like for you guys, having that be such a long period of time? And also, like, how did you make sure that the people you were bringing on to the project understood the nuance of the project and, like, made sure that ball kind of stayed in your court? Because it could easily be lost.
I think we were fortunate that we were asked to make a movie by our producers, right? So from jump, the people who were making this film were on board with what we wanted to do. This is 10 years ago when Jess and Keith sort of made this request, but so we were all working on it together for a long time, but also living a lot, right? I mean, our last 10 years were probably not dissimilar in a grand scale from your last 10 years. You lived life, and we would keep checking in with this script and keep sort of making revisions to it, and there were a bunch of false starts. Oh, it's gonna get made now, and then it didn't for whatever reason. And moments where we were super frustrated with that process and be, why isn't it? But the honest truth of it is, it wouldn't have been as good if we had made it any of those other times. So, it happened at the moment that it was meant to happen. But there were certainly times where we were like, we're done with this. We're just shelving this, we'll keep it. But it just stayed there. It was an idea that sort of kept simmering and didn't seem old. I have a lot of ideas that I haven't produced, right? Way more of them than I have produced. And most of those, at a certain point, you just decide that's actually not happening. I don't think about them anymore. And sometimes I laugh when I read them in an old notebook or something. Oh, what a stupid idea that was. But this one keeps, sort of kept coming back for us. And so that was the real trigger of it, was the lasting power for it being 10 years. And then in terms of having the people really understand it, it's a lot of squad in the thing. Jasmine came and did a reading of the final, close to the final version of the film before we were casting it even, and read all of the female characters. Sort of after we watched her do that, it was oh, well, there's no way we don't want her to be Ashley in this, So you just sort of pick people up as you go on, and people fell in love with the piece too, which was incredibly gratifying. People who had no business working on this movie would read the script and say, "I really want to work on this movie," and pass up more money and easier jobs to do it. So that was also part of it. I think we were lucky in a lot of ways to have folks, to come in contact with folks who really wanted to be a part of it because they understood it, because it expressed something for them.
All right, we got time for one last question. Yeah.
I wanted to thank you guys. I'm from Alameda County, so I really appreciate the authenticity. One thing that struck me was the costumes and how people dressed felt really authentic to me. Was your costume designer also from the Bay Area, or was it kind of just what you guys would wear, you just took out of your closet?
She is from the Bay Area. We really made sure that she was in contact with a lot of brands that we know and wanted to support. So there's a lot of Oaklandish clothing. There's a lot of the Schmop Life crew, a lot of their T-shirts.
Dope Only,
which is Mr. Fab's clothing line, and we just tried to go with a lot of.
Dope Era.
Oh, that's Dope Era. Dope Only is the Oakland USA.
Yeah, that Oakland USA shirt. But like, it's funny, we ran into this a lot where people were like, who weren't from there, were like, everybody in the movie just can't wear things that say Oakland on their shirts. And I was like, go look in my closet. Like, open my closet and tell me what you see.
Yeah, so we just try to stay true to that as much as possible, but also like we wanted to wear dope shit, so that's what we did.
All right, so you guys open in limited cities on the 20th of July, nationwide on the 27th.
Yep.
You'll be at the Grand Lake opening night.
Before that even, but also probably.
There's a solid chance. Drunk.
Thank you guys so much for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you guys so much for sticking around. We appreciate it. Thanks for having us.